Good morning, everyone. I think we're about ready to get started, so if I could encourage you to get the last bits of your first round of breakfast and come to your tables. Ooh, it got really quiet. Okay. All right, well, I guess that's my cue. I got to fill the silence, right? So good morning, everyone. My name is Mindy Tular, and I facilitate the Utah Children's Care Coordination Network, and we're just very pleased that you're all here. We appreciate you taking time out of your really busy schedules to join us this morning. We're very excited for this learning session, which is about really focusing on families. What do they value around care coordination? So I'm just going to take a few minutes and kind of introduce you to some of the key people on our UCCCN team, and then tell you a little bit about what we do. And I'd also like to make sure and recognize the organizations that are here with us today as well. So our team includes me, and I also manage the medical home portal, and I hope that most of you or all of you are familiar with that. So it's an effort that's been going on for quite a while under the direction of Dr. Chuck Norland. He's been very passionate for a long time about children with special health care needs and how to improve care for them, both from the family perspective and caregiver perspective, and also from the provider and other professional perspectives. And so the medical home portal is really designed as a resource to be available 24/7 online to allow anyone who has a child with special health care needs or is involved in that care team somehow to find resources that they need. And so we utilize the medical home portal in the UCCCN to try and make sure that it provides things that are useful to those who are involved in the care coordination for these children. And then we also benefit, so that the medical home portal gets improved because of our UCCCN meetings as well. So we're really pleased about that. So Dr. Chuck Norland is intimately involved in what goes on with UCCCN. We also have Tay Haynes, who was in the front hall helping get you checked in, who's responsible for making sure that that directory of services and resources stays up to date. We have Gabby Baragoshi and Don Bentley, who are part of UPIC, and you may be familiar with that organization as well. Dr. Norland was working with that for years and years to improve quality in pediatric practices and other organizations caring for children, and we appreciate their help. They're very helpful with planning UCCCN and making sure that those meetings go off without a hitch, and they'll be helping us today as well. And then we're very fortunate to partner with the Utah Department of Health Bureau of Maternal and Child Health, and also with Utah Family Voices at the Utah Parent Center. And so Eric Christensen and Gina Polamani, respectively, are those people, and they're both here today. In fact, Gina's going to tell some of you to stop talking occasionally, so thank you for being timekeeper this morning, Gina. I really appreciate that. So. All right, so again, we really want to say thank you so much. Many of you took time that you probably don't usually have to allot to this to come today, and others even came from quite a distance to join us today, so we really appreciate it. I'm sure I don't have everyone up here as well, so I apologize if I didn't get your organization listed here, but we really want to thank you all again. We've got Intermountain Healthcare, we've got Select Health here, we've got Primary Children's Hospital and the NICU represented. We have Shriners Hospitals for Children, Salt Lake City. Hi, Jill. We have Help Me Grow Utah. We have lots from the University of Utah, and including health plans. We have, again, from the Utah Department of Health, we have Eric Christensen's Integrated Services Program represented here, as well as Eddie. And we're really pleased that we've got some public health departments who are represented here. So thank you very much for those of you who drove for such a long time to get here today. We have Valley Behavioral Health and UR Land represented. We have a number of people from Utah Valley Pediatrics, so thank you very much for making the trek. We have a lot of Wasatch Pediatrics folks here, and we appreciate them. We have We Care Pediatrics, and of course we have the Utah Family Voices Utah Parent Center. So thank you again very much, and we plan to make this worth your while. So to just give you a little bit of an overview about the Utah Children's Care Coordination Network, or UCCCN, or UCCCN, or Dr. Norland had a CHIPRA medical home demonstration grant, and this was a number of years ago, and through that grant he was able to fund care coordination positions in 12 practices, 9 primary care and 3 subspecialty practices. And one of the things that we learned through that demonstration grant was how valuable it was for these care coordinators to get together on a regular basis and talk. They really learned a lot from each other. They enjoyed the networking that came out of it, and they were able to share resources and really support and help each other. So we decided that it would be great to go ahead and try and continue that after that grant ended. And so that's how UCCCN was born. So we started in January of 2015. And we meet every month on the third Wednesday of the month, with the exception of the months when we do learning sessions like this one. So we would have met Wednesday. And it's really been great. And we have seen that we have participants from really all over the state, occasionally even beyond the state borders, because we do have the opportunity to meet and join remotely. But we always like to see people's faces if it's at all possible. So we love to have people come in person. And we've been very fortunate to be able to meet at the Utah Parent Center, and so we really appreciate that. It's been a terrific central location for folks coming from north and south, and from east as well. So what we do in those meetings is we often talk about cases that are kind of stumping our care coordinators, and so we allow sort of a crowdsourcing period of time where we can have people with experience in those kinds of issues give their experience and wealth of knowledge to help someone who's going through it right now. And we often see that that is very, very valuable and useful to these care coordinators and care managers, as well as the families that they serve. So we love to also hear the updates in subsequent meetings about how that all worked out. So we're often able to find other new resources, and whenever we do, through this crowdsourcing effort, we add those to the Medical Home Portal Services Directory. And so that's really been a very rich and rewarding part of our meetings. And we write up those cases, and we make sure that people receive those in the form of an email after the meetings. So we have a record of that. We also bring in presenters from organizations throughout the state that we think have, relevance and value to pediatrics, to care coordinators, and to families. And so we learn more about these systems, and we learn more about how things may be changing. In fact, in April, we'll have a legislative wrap-up on the items that will be of value to, again, care coordinators and the families they serve. So we're really pleased about that as well. And then we also have discussions, because we recognize that we can really learn from each other. So in fact, this year, I think we're going to be focusing a little bit more on that, to look at what some practices may be doing who are, for instance, a little farther along in whatever it may be, and learn from them so that we don't have to recreate the wheel or make those same mistakes. So I think that's, again, one of the really best parts of UCCCN is getting together, learning from each other, and knowing that you've got someone out there who's done the same thing or is doing the same thing. So again, there's no fee to participate, and we meet on the third Wednesday of each month in the morning. And I'll talk a little bit more at the end about what's going to be happening starting in April. Okay, so here's our agenda this morning. It's pretty full. So as I mentioned, we are going to be doing some timekeeping. So in just a minute or two, we'll get started with our parent panel. And we're very pleased that we have, I think we should have 6 people who will be here this morning, who will be able to talk with us a little bit about their experiences with a child with special health care needs and what they've experienced around care coordination. So that's going to go until approximately 10:10, and then we'll take a short break. So at that point in time, we hope you'll feel free to get more food, use the restrooms, etc. And then we'll pick back up again about 10:20, and this is where we'll have some primary care and specialty care providers who will be talking to us again about their experience with care coordination and their perspectives on some of the things that we've heard from the parents. And your participation is very valued in both these panel sessions. So we'll have time for audience questions, not quite so much during the parent panel, but more during the second panel, and we would love to hear what you have to say. So we want you to be thinking about that. There's some pens and paper on your table, so if you want to jot down any thoughts, please feel free. You're more than welcome to. And then we'll wrap up at about 11:20 or so. All right, with that, I'll give a little bit of housekeeping information. So bathrooms in this building are up the stairs and to the north. And we also have some other bathrooms on the lower level that are accessible through the elevator. And the elevator's right here in this hallway. So it's a little bit of it's an older building, so you have to travel a little farther to those lower bathrooms. I mentioned about timekeeping, so Gina up here in the front will have some cards, and hopefully you'll be willing to make eye contact with her as she's holding something up saying, "Stop, stop." And then finally, for the panelists, I want to make sure that you understand what our mics are doing up here. So each chair has its own mic, and in order to make those effective, you've got to push the button on there before you start speaking. You don't have to hold it. Go ahead and talk, and then when you're done talking, press it again. And we'll remind you if that doesn't seem to be working. And then lastly, same kind of thing with the audience. We want to make sure we hear your questions and your comments. So we have a couple of mics that we'll be able to bring to you when you're going to talk. If you'll hold your question and just raise your hand, we'll bring those mics to you. Otherwise, we'll need to repeat what you said so that we make sure to get it on our audio recording, and as well as making sure that the folks in the room and the panelists can hear what you have to say. All right. Well, I think that we're ready to start. So if I can ask our family members to come on up, I'll just give you a little warning that this is a little dangerous up here. There are stairs around the back of the risers. They're just a little hard to get to. So it's a big step up if you don't use the stairs. And welcome. And again, we're really pleased to have you all here, and thank you for taking the time this morning to join us. So as I have on the slide here, and as we've let these folks know, our plan is to ask them to take about a minute to talk with us a little bit about their child, and then immediately following that to basically tell us a story about their experience in the past with care coordination. And we've given them a number of different sort of perspectives or points to touch on and expand on in that time. And so we'll try and keep that to a total of about 8 minutes. And then we'll just go right in order, and we'll do all of those, and then we'll take some time for audience questions. So with that, Tina Purcells, may I ask you to start? I know.
Hi, my name is Tina Purcells, and I am a mom of a beautiful son with special health care needs. His name is Adam. He was born at 27 weeks. I was flown up to the university by helicopter and delivered emergency C-section very quickly and very scary. Adam spent the next 367 days in the newborn intensive care unit at Primary Children's, and he got to go home finally by ambulance. He came home with a ventilator, a tracheostomy, a feeding tube, a feeding pump, oxygen, a home nurse, and everything else that goes along with that. It was a little overwhelming. Adam was our first child. We didn't have a lot of experience with children, period, especially a child as extremely complicated as Adam. And as the years went by, we learned about primary care physician, medical home, things that helped us along the way, and that was our new normal. Adam's now 18 years old. 2 days ago, we went to court to have, how did I word that the other day? So Adam could have us be his protectors and guardians for the rest of his life. This whole 18 years, we pulled away from the parking lot the other day, or from the driveway from our house with Adam in the car going to the courthouse, and it was kind of an odd moment for us. We just looked at each other like, wow, we're doing this now. So it's a blessing, and it's also kind of weird. It's like, okay, another new normal. Adam's currently diagnosed with hydrocephalus. He's shunted, cerebral palsy, cortical vision impairment, cortical hearing impairment, autism, epilepsy, chronic lung disease, no motility of the esophagus, and he is medically fragile. Most of all, Adam's awesome. Are we Okay. So I decided, she gave us several different choices of things to talk about, and I decided to talk about, my first piece is how important information and planning for your child's care is shared among your various providers. We were lucky to have a really great primary care physician that guided us in the kind of care that Adam needed. What I kind of do is anytime Adam sees a specialist, I ask them to please send the information to his primary care physician. And by the time we go back to our primary care physician's office, he says, oh, I see that this and this and this happened since the last time we've seen each other. Sometimes we'll have to contact our primary care physician about some of those things. But it's important for us to have him stay in the loop with every piece of care that's going on with Adam, whether it be his medical care, his mental health care, his school nurse. Adam requires a nurse with him at school. They all contact our awesome primary care physician. And so he's got a record. So I believe that if I went into his office and looked at Adam's record, I would see all of those other things along with what he's done with Adam. Very, very important for us. We also have care coordination within our pediatric office, and that information is shared with our care coordinator as well. That way, I can call up the care coordinator and say, hey, I need a letter for guardianship, and I need it to be really, really descriptive of Adam's disabilities and his needs. Can you provide that? Yep, we sure can. Let me get on that right now. And within a few days, I had the letter for guardianship. That's the kind of help I generally need. The other piece I decided to talk on was the range of roles of the family in coordinating care currently and optimally, what I won't let go of, and where do parents bring that optimal piece balanced with their time, their energy, and everything else. I thought about this for a long time, and we're gonna, each parent is so very, very different. And so some parents are going to need a lot more care coordination, a lot more understanding, a lot more helping them to take those steps, especially in the beginning. And call it what you will. It could be control. I don't mind having that label. But some of the things that are involved in Adam's care, I just can't let go of. Adam needs things like enteral food. That's how he survives. He needs tracheostomy care. He needs oxygen. Those things, unfortunately, our care coordinators don't generally work on Saturdays and Sundays, but I do. So I have to kind of keep control of some of those things. A while back, I had another mom I was talking to that had been working with a care coordinator and thinking that that person was going to change everything and make things happen that they needed to happen. And unfortunately, the care coordinator couldn't do that. What I like to tell parents is don't take no for an answer from somebody who can't say yes. And this was taught to me by a very, very, very wise person. And what that means is, I'm not going to stop on Saturday or Sunday. If my son needs oxygen, we're going to get it. One way or the other, whether we have to drive to a hospital, he's going to get it. Sometimes a care coordinator might stop and say, I'm sorry, I can't do any more for you. But it doesn't change the fact that that child still needs that care. So what I would end up doing is moving on and saying, okay, thank you for your help. I'm going to find somebody who can say yes. The advice I would give to care coordinators on that piece is to encourage families to take those steps. Encourage families to be involved as much as possible. Like I said, every family is different, so you're going to find some families that need tons of support and some families that say, hey, I just need you to get this letter written for me. Sometimes, depending on the family situation, depending on health in the family, things like that, it could change. For me, it has changed. We've had illness in the family that completely put me in a position where I was incapacitated. I couldn't do the care. So then I needed care coordinators to really step up for me for a short amount of time. So those are the kind of things I wanted to talk about. Like I said, there are going to be things that people aren't going to let go of. I need to know in my own mind that I've got everything in line for my son, for his care, for his life. And so, yeah. It's your turn.
Hello, my name is Christine Evans, and I hail from the great city of Tooele. It's on your way to Wendover. Cameron is our third. I might read a lot of this because I could really go on forever about Cameron. She is the third of our 5 children. Cameron and her twin sister Caitlin were born at 23 weeks. I think we found out 4 weeks before that we were even having twins, so things were a little bit crazy during that time. They were born on December 8th, 99. She really struggled her first 3 years of life. That is when she had the majority of her struggles. It was mostly dealing with hydrocephalus and getting her shunt system right. She really liked to challenge those neurosurgeons, which is good. She did experience a lot of the typical preemie stuff. She had grade 3 and 4 head bleeds, the PDA, the Valperf, just all those typical things. And I stopped counting at 21 shunt revisions during those first 3 years of life. I would say we're probably over 50 surgeries total in her life. Her twin passed away when they were 2 weeks old. From similar complications. She had a few other major things going on. Cameron was the stronger of the two, definitely. Cameron beat me up all the time in utero, and Caitlin was just kind of like the mellow kid. Let's see. Most recently, our struggles have been epilepsy. We're really have maxed out seizure meds, so we're have no choice but to try a lot of alternative methods, which we're really excited about how they're helping her. She just got her VNS implant about a month ago, and we're already seeing some great things, and it's not even turned up. The electricity's not turned up full power yet, so I'm actually really thrilled about that. And that took a lot of coordination and help to get to that point. So her smile, though, is incredible, and we're actually seeing a lot more of it these days as we try and wean her off all these sedating seizure meds. And her giggle is by far our favorite thing to hear, and she loves to, if you go, ow, and she'll sit there and snicker and giggle, and you're like, okay, thanks. But she loves to tease her dad. She loves the guys in our family. I have a 13-year-old son, and I think those are her 2 favorite people in the entire world is her dad and her brother, which it really warms my heart to see a little 13-year-old kid have to give his 18-year-old sister a kiss every night. So she's really changed not only my life, but I think all of our lives. And for a nonverbal kid, I think that's amazing. So I took some notes. The one thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was the most helpful or valuable experience that I've had with care coordination. And it was actually probably about 2 or 3 years ago, she was all of a sudden having some outbursts, some pain, something. We couldn't figure out what it was. And there was no rhyme or reason to it. There was no, I couldn't see an antecedent. I couldn't see anything. So we started from square one, and, it could be her shunt, it could be this, it could be that. And I think I've visited about every doctor that we had on our list. So we ended up seeing, adding a psychiatrist to that list, which we've never done before, because Cameron's actually a really mellow, kind of chill girl. And we were put on an anxiety med, and things got a little bit better, I think, but I would still find these moments where I would be like lifting her up, and she would really like grab on and go, like she was trying to tell me something, and I just couldn't figure it out. I was getting really frustrated because I could not figure out what was going on. And so, and we unfortunately had not had the experience of having a fabulous primary care doctor. We had good pediatricians, but, our first one, his health started declining, so he left, so we found another one, and he skipped town. And then I found another one, which is our current primary care. He's a family practice, and he had a child similar to Cameron, so I'm like, you're my guy. And he has been really helpful, and he's been a great guy. He's in Tooele, but a busy guy. Lost his wife about 2 or 3 years ago too, so he's had his own issues dealing with. So, but I do see the comprehensive care clinic, and that's where that we have gotten most of our great comprehensive care. And so anyway, so I made an appointment, and I went there, and I said, I am not leaving. I have had it. I think we had been dealing with this for about a year. And I said, I'm either leaving her here with you to figure this out, or you are helping me to figure out what is going on, because I can't do this anymore. It's upsetting our family. And most of all, Cameron is trying to tell me something, and I don't know what it is. I don't have that knowledge. And so we went down the list. I told him everything I had done. He had been helping me from this point too. But nothing we were doing thus far was working. So he did an examination and said, and literally it was a wince he noticed with her. So he figured it out, and we had kidney stones, actually, was the thing. And so it was a great experience, and I wish I could go into like the whole comprehensive care coordination with it, because we had the social worker was helping me out the whole time, the nurse practitioner. I mean, it was a great experience. And similarly, we had an experience when she was in 4th grade that was not as great. And we didn't have comprehensive care at that time. We didn't have care coordination at that time. And she was going through another experience similar to that, where it was her shunts. And so that's why I think I was trying to figure out that it was her shunts that last time. So, but it took us a lot longer to figure that out, and because we didn't have the comprehensive care of it all. So I was really grateful that we did have that experience with that care coordination to figure out those nasty kidney stones. So thank you.
My name is Liz Wall, and I'm the mother of 3 beautiful daughters. The eldest is married off last year. The second one is engaged to be married. And the youngest in our family is a 16-year-old redhead named Lottie, who came to us with Down syndrome. And she had a very traumatic birth. We were at primaries, definitely not as long as you guys, but still the NICU experience for a month. And that's how we began life with Lottie. Fast forward to now. She absolutely loves dancing. She loves music. And if we hear a beat anywhere we're at, we start dancing. If that's the grocery line, that's where it happens. She loves to ski. She loves to go swimming. She loves to do the climbing wall at the National Ability Center. And when she was first with us, we went around telling everybody that she's very high functioning. I think that was what we thought we were supposed to tell everyone, and that's simply not the truth at all. Lottie is pretty much nonverbal to other than family members. If you're around her enough and you're the one-on-one, you may pick up certain words. There's not really a full sentence. So she can't tell us if she hurts. She can't tell us, she has no point of reference for any of that. And she requires 24/7 care. So somebody has to be with her all the time. And even though these are barriers to, life for Lottie in a lot of ways, and life for all of us in a lot of ways, she has a very, very funny sense of humor. She didn't really have much choice with that. She was born into this family. And being a wall, you have a sense of humor. And the one funny sentence that she can pronounce, and it's not really a sentence, it's 2 words, is "it's hilarious." So I was going to tell a story about what care coordination, how great that was for us this last summer. Lottie was, and it's in the dental world, and it's 3 different providers that we had to get everybody together instead of siloed situations. And Lottie was biting her fingers so badly that she was bleeding and they were all callousing over. And so her dentist, Dr. Brent DeHart, who I can't say enough about, is a pediatric dentist who has a child with autism. So he completely understands she can't tell him that. Even though we would go to the office and try to have a visit and try to get things accomplished, we couldn't. So Dr. DeHart's care coordinator got in touch with our care coordinator at Summit Pediatrics, and also Dr. McBee, who is the oral surgeon, because Dr. Brent DeHart, being a smarty pants, thought, you know what, this may be her wisdom teeth. Now Lottie can't say, this is hurting me. She also can't sit through an x-ray without being sedated. So we all systems go. Care coordinator from DeHart's office got care coordinator from Summit Pediatrics, care coordinator from McBee's office, all to show up at 7 o'clock in the morning at Orem Hospital last summer. And it was just a guess whether or not she had to have her wisdom teeth removed. But we already had the oral surgeon there. So the team was all there. Not only that, every person who was going to be in the room with Lottie for surgery actually was there as well, coming to talk to John and I and introducing themselves to Lottie. So that was a comfort to us as a family. Our pediatrician at Summit Pediatrics in Park City, Utah, always has her panels, blood work, anything that needs to be done, because we can't clearly do that in the office. Those were all in place. So while she's under, we have all of her tests being run. Dr. McBee sees she needs her wisdom teeth removed. Somebody comes back and tells us that. Then clearly we're in for a different ride. And Dr. DeHart does all the other services that we need done, while she's under. Fast forward to later on that afternoon, she's sitting there with her Barney, pretty miserable, but Barney's her favorite thing in the whole world. She is sitting there with her Barney, okay, we did that. All the tests come back, for the pediatrician, and it was just this amazing, smooth experience. The next question I was going to talk about kind of piggybacks off of what Tina was talking about, what parents want to let go of, what parents can let go of, what role care coordination plays. And I can kind of put a different hat on with that, because I'm a parent of a special needs child, but I'm also a parent who's employed at Summit Pediatrics. So I'm in the clinic about 25 hours a week. And from my perspective, we have a wonderful care coordinator, a medical home care coordinator. Her name is Dusty. And you want a Dusty. I want a Dusty. I want one person in a clinic who I can call. I want one person to have my story. And that week, 1 week, it may be a crisis. I'm in a crisis, so Dusty knows that. She can liaison with the doctor and whoever else needs to be pulled in. The next week, it may be this IEP is going south. What do I do? That's a school component. The next week, it may be something else. Dusty has a pulse on my family. Dusty knows what's going on with my family. And it may not necessarily be medical, but that's okay. You also want a Liz. I'm going to tell you why. We spent the first month in the NICU, and I know what it's like to hear machines keep your child alive. And I know what it's like to walk down a hallway when you come home from a long day sitting at the hospital vigil with your child, walk by a nursery and your baby isn't in there, and you just have to resign yourself to shut the door after a while because you just can't face it. And I know what it's like to finally get that baby out of the NICU with a bunch of medical equipment that you have no clue what you're doing what you're doing with it, but you become an expert pretty darn quick, and you're so homebound that you would bribe the occupational therapist to stay, just so you have a conversation with an adult, and so there's someone else in the house with you. I know what it's like for parents when they need to have, maybe a meal at the hospital because the hospital food is not that great. And maybe that's what I can do. I can go down there and give a meal to that parent. All of the things that have happened in my world serve me well in what I do as a job, because I can go and be that parent to those other parents out there. And I can have that woman on the phone with me like I did yesterday, and she tells me all the medical stuff that's going on with her child. But my question to her was, how's mom holding up? So.
I'm Lisa Thornton, and I am mom to Kate, who's 14, and she's in 9th grade at East High School. She loves to swim and do the fitness program at UFIT at the University of Utah. She dances at Tanner Dance. Your daughter should join.
We have done that.
At the U. And she's also a teacher's aide for the younger class there for children with disabilities. So she works with a child that is 6 with Down syndrome, and it's so fun to watch their stubbornness together. She takes a theater class also at Tanner Dance on Saturdays, and she works at the library at East High, as she's done at every school that she's attended. She loves Power Rangers, and she made a website with her sister that has 1,257 photos that she's researched of the various Power Rangers with lots of information. So if you will, write down her website and ask her a question. She would love it. So I'm serious, get your pencils out. So it's Ninja Steel 29.weebly.com. So you do the HTTPS thing, and then ninjasteel29.weebly.com. Ask her a question. She will be in heaven if she comes home from school and sees some questions from you. And you'll love to read what she's written about some of her life. She has her bio on there. So Kate also happens to have Prader-Willi syndrome, which is a rare disorder that affects the 15th chromosome. When she was born, she was complete failure to thrive, lots of time in the NICU, little movement, no suck, no crying, needed oxygen for 2 years, feeding tubes, incredibly floppy baby. She finally started progressing, and so they sent us home and said they thought she would be normal. And then 2 weeks later, I'm home alone, and I get a call from the geneticist's assistant and said, just calling to let you know that Kate has Prader-Willi syndrome. And when I started sobbing, she said, you sound upset. So Kate came home with all of the tubes, monitors, everything that these guys are all talking about. Every time the alarms would sound, our kids would scream and cry and come running in to see what was happening. My husband has a PhD in biomedical engineering, and I'm an attorney, and this knocked us to our knees. We were frightened, alone, and we were lost. And at the time, we had 4 other children, and 3 of those, so we had 4 preschoolers. So this syndrome meant the following for Kate: cognitive impairment, weak muscle tone, scoliosis, UPJ blockage of her kidney, severe behavior problems, and the worst part was sometime after 2, a switch went off, and she was always hungry, and she was a food seeker. So every place we go is an issue. We lock up everything in our home, and you take her to the soccer game of her sister, and all the donuts come out, and it's a tantrum. And so life is incredibly interesting for us. So I quit my job and started plowing through the syndrome, and how I would have given anything to have a care manager at that point that knew something. I fought mountains of insurance bills, fought doctors who had popped into the NICU and seen her and not even talked to us, billed us their out-of-network bill. So I spent a lot of time crying and swearing to myself and talking to these insurance companies and trying to deal with the mountain of medical bills. We somehow missed a $42 urology bill that it got sent to collections before we knew anything. And our credit report was beamed for 10 years to the same extent as if we had never paid a single medical bill or our mortgage. If we had let everything default, that $42 bill destroyed our credit. And we paid the $42 as soon as we knew about it. But obviously all of the appeals and everything, you just met with uncaring and uninformed. And anyway, the worst part for us was finding doctors who would listen to us. We had to research every single issue that Kate might face, and we had to find the answer as to what should happen for her. And then we had to find a doctor who would do it. We had one doctor tell us that we were standing on our own soapbox if we wanted the FDA-approved medication that was out there and that everyone was using. One nurse told the doctor in front of us that Kate had pot-bellied syndrome. And you know, these are mistakes and people are trying their hardest, and I understand that. But as a parent, it's just so defeating to try so hard and work so hard and have to fight so much. 2 years later, we met with Dr. Casey in genetics, and he helped us outline how we could start a multidisciplinary clinic for Prader-Willi syndrome. And my husband and I selected the clinicians for that clinic, the ones who had listened with open minds and helped us. So right now we're starting our 11th year of a clinic that has genetics, endocrinology, pulmonology, psychiatry, physical therapy, speech therapy, nutrition, occupational therapy, and psychology. We were then able to get a clinical care manager in place who is a gem. And then my husband and I scoured all the literature and worked with the National Committee on writing best practices for Prader-Willi syndrome from birth to death, using all the published literature, and we used those best practices in our clinics. We had a graduate student follow the clinic from the beginning and did research studies, and those studies were published in the American Journal of Medical Genetics. And the difference in the families is enormous when you have that kind of help. Their stress levels, the number of medical interventions. Our children in Utah are healthy, and they are not obese, and they are living full and great lives because of this clinic. It is amazing. They get diagnosed very early because the genetics doctors know who we are. They are sent to our care manager within 2 days. They are there, and they are right into the clinic getting the care. There's no more fighting for treatment. It's right there for them, and they don't miss the crucial interventions that we missed because we were trying so hard to figure it out on our own. So we see 9 clinicians in one day, and that saves so much time and energy. The best yet is that the clinicians meet before, and they round table before the day, and I bring lunch to them while they do that. And they talk about our kids and what care they should get that day, and then they have the appointments. We have all the appointments, and then they meet afterwards, and they all meet together and talk through the recommendations that are going to happen for our children. And then the medical care manager helps us get those things done. It's been just a blessing. We do several things. We help with we have a legal consultant, an education expert. They help with several things that are not medical. We help with guardianship, special needs trusts. We help families get equipment like bikes, wheelchair ramps. The doctors come and talk at Camp Costopolis. The amount of help that we get is enormous. We use private and public health care as much as possible, and as wonderful as that is, there are roadblocks. Fighting to get the FDA-approved medication. Utah Medicaid denies a medication using a single study from Canada that's been refuted over and over. We're the only state in the country that denies the medication. We have our pulmonologist that's been part of the clinic since the beginning. Select Health, who she's a preferred provider, they won't let her use the clinic. They won't let her use her sleep lab. And so she can only get another doctor's interpretation of the sleep data. So our children are missing huge amounts of help that they need because of those decisions. And I will skip that last part and just go on to say that I'm a very strong believer, obviously, in care coordination and in medical clinics. It's made all the difference for the children in Utah suffering from this syndrome.
Hi, my name is Annabelle, and my daughter Nina Pearl is 19 months old. She was born 7 weeks early with 5 congenital birth defects in her heart and digestive tract. So my pregnancy progressed relatively normally for a really long time. I was about 32 weeks pregnant before I knew that anything was wrong, and then I had her a week later. So like a lot of moms up here have said, I came reeling into the NICU at Primary Children's in complete shock, unable to hear hardly anything that was said to me for about a month. Nina's surgery started when she was 2 days old. She basically, the day after Nina was born, they asked us if we would like to take comfort measures. They told us that there might be too much wrong, you know? And I think all of us in this room that are parents can identify on some level with the devastation that you experience at times like that. And Nina today, you know, all these surgeries later, a staph infection in her chest cavity, 4.5 months in the NICU, has this amazing spirit that really has changed, you know, has changed my life, her father's life, you know, all of our lives. And as far as a diagnosis, it's that catch-all of Vater or Vactural that isn't really a diagnosis, but is a diagnosis, you know. And as far as long-term issues, she has awful gastric motility. She's still G-tube fed. She still has an ileostomy with a rectovestibular fistula, lack of uterus, lack of vagina that needs to be repaired. So feeding is our biggest problem, weight gain, things like that. And so for us, care coordination is everything because we have 3 specialists. And believe it or not, they don't really like to talk to each other. You know, they like to talk to me and let me carry the information to the next specialist, except the problem is that I'm not a doctor. So I don't always know exactly how to interpret the information when I carry it to the next specialist. And then when the next specialist gives me their feedback and I have to carry it to the next specialist, again, the problem is that I'm not a doctor. So along the way, I become responsible for things that I shouldn't be responsible for. And so what happens when I'm responsible for things that I shouldn't be responsible for is that when things go wrong, I feel guilty for things that I shouldn't feel guilty for. You know, as a mom, there's a lot of guilt anyway. Am I working too much? Am I working too little? Am I home enough? Am I home too little? Am I playing with her enough? Am I playing with her too little? You add into that, did I call the doctor on time or did I call the doctor too late? Should I have told the doctor that or should I have told the doctor this? You know, would this have gone wrong if I had just done this differently? You add those things in and it's just devastating, you know. So we had a situation earlier in the summer last year where Nina was throwing up Christmas tree green stomach bile. And I kept taking her to the ER. And the first time I took her to the ER, they did all this imaging and they came back and said, well, Nina has gallstones. And as a parent, I said, oh, that sounds like a really big deal. What should I do? And the surgeon on duty in the ER said, well, your primary surgeon is this guy, so you'll follow up with him. Well, all that I knew about this surgeon was that he worked in this certain clinic, and we saw him in this certain clinic. So I called that clinic. And I spoke to the nurse practitioner of that clinic, and she said, oh, I'll let him know when he gets back from vacation. I said, oh, geez, I'm super worried. It sounds really scary that my 11-pound daughter has gallstones. She's still throwing up Christmas tree green stomach bile. Is there something I should be looking for? We'll get back to you. So I took her to her GI doctor and said, gosh, she hasn't gained weight in like 2 months, and now she's falling down on her curve, and you've diagnosed her with failure to thrive, and she's still throwing up this Christmas tree green stomach bile. Have you talked to her surgeon? Yeah, I've talked to her surgeon. Yeah. And so then I finally got a hold of the nurse practitioner in the clinic, and she said, yeah, he's not super worried. We'll see you in a couple months for your clinic appointment. And I said, oh, okay, are you sure? Because I'm worried. Something's not right. She said, no, you're good. He's not super worried. So you fast forward a little bit, and we're in crisis. And there's a couple ladies in this room. One of them is sitting right there. Her name is Sylvia. And she came over to my house for her monthly early intervention visit. And my daughter was throwing up Christmas tree green bile. And I was crying, and she was crying. And Sylvia said, God, I wonder what's going on. I said, well, you know, she was diagnosed with gallstones. And Sylvia said, yeah, I think that might be it. So then I called my pediatrician's office, Summit Pediatrics, and my pediatrician, Dr. Leslie Webster, who's sitting right there, said, yeah, I think that might be it. Why don't you guys head on down to the emergency room? On the way, I called the surgeon's clinic, and when the nurse practitioner picked up, she said, I don't know why you keep calling here. I don't know anything about gallstones. And I said, well, why didn't you say that 6 weeks ago? She said, well, I thought this was resolved. I said, well, now we're in the ER. So she had her gallbladder taken out, emergency surgery the next day, and she's been gaining 1 pound a month ever since. She's no longer failing to thrive. So after that, we grabbed a comprehensive care doctor, Dr. Colleen Marty, who's in here today, because when I was sitting in that hospital bed while my daughter had just been given morphine, and the nurse practitioner from general surgery looked down at me and said, why didn't you bring her to the general surgery clinic sooner? I was devastated. I do everything I can for my daughter, you know, and that feeds into the question of what role do I want to play? And the answer is I want to be her mom. That's the role I want to play, you know, and if there's a piece of her care that I want to be in charge of, I want to be in charge of it. If I change my mind a week later, I want to change my mind a week later, and I want you to take it back from me. And if I try to take something over and I decide I don't want to take it over anymore, then I don't want to take it over anymore. And I want you to take it from me. And if you're doing something that I think I can do better and I want to take it back, then I want you to give it back to me. I want to be Nina's mother. You know, whatever that means to me on that day is what I want to be allowed to be. I don't want to be her doctor. I don't want to be, you know, anything but her mom. Now, being her mom means being a wound nurse and, you know, being a care coordinator and being all those things. But to me, that's just a part of being her mom. And, you know, for me, that's the role that I want to play in Nina's life. And I think that's the role that I'm supposed to play in her life. And I want to be allowed to do that in the way that I choose.
Okay, I'm the cakewalk down here. After hearing all those stories, I want to go sit back down. So from even beginning of February when I was contacted about doing this, I just got emotional thinking about it and then hearing all these stories. So I apologize. I'm probably going to cry all the way through this, and especially after hearing all those stories, I have no reason to cry. I have no reason to have been overwhelmed at any point in my life. I can empathize with you on a very, very small. I'm feeling very small over here compared to these moms who've definitely gone the distance for their kids. I apologize. I haven't even started talking really about anything important yet, and I'm already crying. So my son Nixon, when he was about 6 months old, we just started to notice things about his left arm. He seemed to be sort of like holding it behind him and not really using it a ton. And I had visited with somebody and mentioned, and they had suggested that maybe there had been an injury at birth, you know, somewhere in his arm, and that may have been part of why he's not using it or why he seems to be neglecting it. And so that was the start of our journey. We at our next appointment, I asked our pediatrician about it, and he acknowledged, you know, that he wasn't, he didn't have the coordination, he didn't have the grasp reflex, you know, to grab at things like he had already developed with his right side, and so then, you know, he said, well, let's get you in touch with Kids on the Move, the early intervention for our district. And he said, let's, at 9 months, we'll reevaluate it, and we'll see if that's improved at all. Anyways, maybe probably about a week or two later, I got a call from him on his lunch break, which, I really appreciate, that he was thinking about my son, and he thought, I don't want to wait. If this was my kid, I wouldn't want to wait until 9 months. He said, I want him to go and see a neurologist right away. And anyway, so we got a pediatric neurology appointment set up, and the neurologist evaluated his arm, same sort of thing, acknowledged that that there was something that we needed to find out more about. She thought maybe that there were some pinched nerves or something. Wanted to do an MRI of his spine, and anyway, so while we were trying to figure out all of the insurance part of it, that it sort of delayed us. Anyways, one day, it was just a couple days before his MRI, he had, I guess, been wearing pants too big. I don't know why. It seems like we would have seen him in his diaper moving around, because he kind of did this army crawl. He wouldn't use his left arm, but he would pull and sort of do this thing. But all of a sudden we look at him and go, oh my gosh, he's not even using his leg. Like, it looked like he was with his foot. And we just, when he was sliding around with his diaper, we realized that he was dragging his leg too. So we got an appointment with a neurologist to change that MRI to an MRI of his brain. So anyways, from there, before I even got back from the hospital, she called and said that that it had come back abnormal and that he had what was called cortical dysplasia. And she said, you can go ahead and look at that look that up online, and let's meet tomorrow. Which in hindsight, I'm like, why would you tell somebody that? Because then we had the whole evening to look at the internet for what this was and not have any sort of medical interpretation for it. Probably bad advice. I'm not sure why that happened that way, but so anyways, the next day we met with her, and she explained more about the malformation in his brain on the right side, and gave him a diagnosis of cerebral palsy. And then, I guess everything since then, I was speaking with Robin Lindsay, and I said I had to go grab his journal and look back at it, because this was 2 years ago last month, and we've come so far that you forget those emotions that were so overwhelming at the time. I wanted to look back through his journal at some of those really raw emotions and experiences that those feelings that we had gone through as we were sort of finding our way. Now we've been able to come up for air for quite a bit now, and so you think, oh, I forgot that we even have any adjustment to our new normal or whatever, I guess. And then so now you can see why, listening to these stories, I'm going, I don't even belong up here. Anyway, so our journey has mostly consisted of therapy. When we first got the diagnosis, she said that according to the imaging and what she had seen from the images, that he may be able to walk with a walker or a brace, and that she thought that there'd be some cognitive delays and those sort of things that we would just have to see as he developed and went along. And she said that we would see seizures by the time that he was 5. And so we sort of went home with all that information and just tried to process it as anybody would. What does this mean for me? What does this mean for my son, for my family? What do our lives look like from this point out? And since then, we've just found our groove, and he hasn't had any seizures. And we're still crossing our fingers for that, and he doesn't seem to be showing any cognitive delays. So for us, it's been the PT and the OT that has really become our world. She also mentioned that it may affect his mouth, and to watch for things with speech and choking and issues swallowing and things like that, but that hasn't been evident either. And so we were really fortunate to have known somebody with Help Me Grow. And as far as our the panel questions that we were given, one of the ones that I picked was the most useful or valuable experience, and it kind of went hand in hand with how important issues were addressed that were not considered medical. Because for us, some of the most valuable experiences weren't necessarily the medical ones. It was just somebody to listen and to go through the grieving process with us, anyways, it's hard to talk about this 2 years past when we've really found our groove, but at the time, it was completely overwhelming, didn't know where to look, what resources to get into. And then also there was a lot of blame. I felt like I had done something wrong to not help his brain fully develop when I was pregnant with him. And so for me, and for our family, the most valuable experience that we had was somebody that acknowledged and validated us, pointed us in the direction of other people who had been there, so that we could have some sort of, forward, somebody that had already been there previous and that could look back and say, this is where you can get to be, when things get under control in your world. And as far as the care coordinating goes, I feel like Annabelle over here, where I feel like I'm expected to be the one that shares that information whenever, because we have service, inpatient and outpatient services. So we have somebody from Kids on the Move, 2 people that come from Kids on the Move, and then as well as Utah Neuro Rehab and Orem Pediatric Rehab. I'll just finish this thought. And every time they come or we go to see them, it's, what do they say? What's the update on this? And I don't have the extensive, our updates aren't as extensive as over here, but it's a little bit. I just feel like I shouldn't be talking after they're talking. It hasn't even been anything for us to complain of. But I do. I feel exactly that way, where there's, it's, hey, can you tell me what happened at your last visit? Is there anything I should know? We know you work with them, but you tell me what's been going on. There's not a lot of coordinating between them, but I don't feel like I have anything to complain about. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this working? Yeah, good. Thank you very much. Those are very compelling stories and very well spoken, we think, all of you. So we'd like to open it up for questions from the audience to explore any ideas or thoughts that you heard about there.
My name is Pat, and I'm a registered nurse. I am a care manager with Select Health. So I'm a bad guy, okay? I represent an insurance company. The model of care management or care coordination that you might get in your PCP offices is a little bit different than what the insurance companies do as far as care management goes. So my question to you ladies is it helpful for you to receive regular phone calls just to say, how are you doing? How is, Cameron doing? What are your needs? Are you doing okay? Is that helpful, or is that burdensome to you? Because if it's not a helpful process, then we need to help change a process and make it something that's going to be valuable for you. However, we're under the constraints of regulatory agencies, state laws, policies, rules, regulations. So from an insurance perspective, is it helpful for you, or is it better just to know who your contact person is?
I'll speak to that. It has been helpful for me, actually, to have a care coordinator through Select Health. I think maybe giving the family a choice and saying, would it be helpful in the beginning of your relationship? Would it be helpful for me to call and check up on you, or would you like me to email? Give a few options so the family, sometimes people are overwhelmed, they can't pick their phone up. So maybe an email would be an easier way, or a text would be an easier way since we have all this technology now. But I actually didn't even realize I had a care person in Select Health, but recently I had a huge issue where my husband's company changed insurances, and we have that coverage with Select Health and the other insurance. They didn't jive. Every one of Adam's, I would say, life-sustaining pieces of durable medical equipment was at risk at that point to be picked up from IHC because they weren't going to jive our insurances anymore. And it was Select Health that assisted us and helped us get things right. So it's definitely beneficial to have somebody to call and make sure that family knows. Not only, here's your care manager. Do you know what a care manager is? And let me tell you what I can help you with if you need assistance. Would you like a phone call? Would you like an email? That type of thing.
I know for us, we had a person from Select Health help us at the beginning especially, and it was so great to go to them because they could work through a lot of the channels and save me so much time. And they knew the backstory, they knew what had already been resolved, so I didn't have to call a new person every time. And that made a huge difference. So it was very, very helpful.
Have you had experience with any other insurance companies that provide similar service?
We have
Yeah.
Regents, and they actually require you to go through a process where you sign up for care coordination if you want it. So unfortunately for me at the time that they offered that, it was just one more thing on a long list of stuff that I didn't have time to do anyway. So we've been lucky enough that through Summit Pediatrics and Comp Care at Primaries, we haven't needed to use that. Really, I've had the support, but I would say that for families that don't have all the support that I have through my primary care and through the Comp Care clinic, don't give us a bunch of forms to fill out to use it if it's possible to avoid that. I know that you need some information, but Regent sent me a packet this thick of stuff that I needed to fill out if I wanted to utilize a care coordinator, and I threw it in the trash and took a nap.
We have Anthem, and it was a similar thing. I didn't know that they had I can't remember what they even call it, I think special care something, through our private insurance. And it was the same thing. It was a lady that called me and was like, okay, we have this, let's chat for a minute. I'm like, yeah, sure. And she goes, can I have someone call you back to finish the process to set you up? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay, here's the number. And I literally wrote it in the dry erase marker on my bathroom mirror because that's where I was at the moment. And I was giving my 2-year-old a bath and Cameron was on the toilet. And I have a dry erase marker in in every bathroom because that's how I entertain my 2-year-old sometimes when I'm doing things. Yeah. Anyways, so I wrote it down, and I even took a picture of it because I knew it would get erased by the toddler. And they said, okay, we're going to call you. When's the best time to call you to finish setting this up? And I'm like, here's the best time to call me. And I don't think they called me during that time that I told them to. And I think they called about twice. And I think the second time they left a message saying, okay, well, call us back if you want to set this up. And I'm like, sorry, I'm not going to call you back. Keep calling me. I do not mind because I will miss probably 6 or 7 calls by the time I talk to you. And even now, this dumb new iPhone won't ring. Like, I don't know what's wrong with it. So keep calling me, and I will answer your phone call eventually. But yes, I appreciate those mini calls because sometimes that's what it takes to get me to talk to you because I keep missing those calls.
I also think that, speaking to the fact that that got thrown in the trash, maybe at different times offer the care coordination, not just in the beginning, even though it might be needed, but mom may not be hearing any of that and may not be able to wrap her brain around what's going on. She's trying to be the mom, trying to be the new medical person in the house, and maybe offer care coordination at different times during, like 5 years out, still be calling and saying, hey, you know what? How's it going?
real quick too. I want you to just try to put yourself. Nobody's going to put themselves fully into our shoes. It's been a long road and a long walk, and for you too, Tina. So, but just to give you a glimpse, I got up this morning. I put Adam on the toilet. He made a poop. I can say that in this room, hopefully. Then we got a bath. Then I got him dressed. Then he wet himself again before I could get him in his wheelchair to get to the bus, so I had to change him again. Then I got him out to the bus with an umbrella because it was raining. And then finally got him off to school. Then, I work. So that's my general morning. And then I got to get myself dressed and cleaned up and all of the things. And thank you. And then I go to work, and then so we all have a schedule too, just like you guys have. And so trying to reach us at certain times, I think these innovative ways of using texts and emails could be really valuable for a lot of families, because they can go back and look at it and go, oh, my care coordinator texted. Now I can text her back when I have a minute instead of picking up the phone. Right now, my teenage daughter is texting me going, Mom, can I go here after school? Mom. And I can't talk to her right now. So we have all this stuff too, and I want you to look at that big picture instead of this is just a client I'm calling right now.
Thank you. Other questions?
I'm Wendy Roberts with, just got hired as the NICU care coordinator. So I'm very interested in gathering resources. So I would love to know more about the Prater-Willi Clinic location, how to contact, what to give families.
Do you want to talk after, or do you? Okay.
Yeah, and we can send the information out to everybody who's signed up, for whom we have emails. So make sure we have your email address. We won't spam you. Other questions?
Just write down Dr. David Viscotchel. He's the doctor over it. So in case you need to do that, you at least have that contact.
Good morning. Eric Christensen with Integrated Services with Utah Department of Health. Just generally, I'm interested in how do you coordinate your care coordinators? Because it seems like a lot of times there are multiple organizations, practices that have some form of care coordination. How do you pick who's kind of the lead on that? And how do you respectfully bow out when maybe you don't need yet another care coordinator?
I would like to take a second and mention Rainbow Kids at Primary Children's Hospital, which is how I do what you're talking about. They were first brought to our attention when we were in the NICU there, and they work out of Primary Children's. It's called palliative care, which at first I thought meant that my child was dying, but it doesn't. It just means that you're under an umbrella. And the nurse practitioners and licensed clinical social worker and chaplain that work with Rainbow Kids have been excellent at giving me a place to bounce things off of and say, hey, I'm not sure if this is working. I'm not sure if I need another person. Oh my gosh, should we bring in one more person? Should we drop a person? They've been really good at sitting down with me and taking the time to say, well, what do you think? How do you feel? And giving me a forum to kind of talk it all out myself and then figure out what I need. So I haven't heard them mentioned today, and I just wanted to mention them. They're a big part of our team.
I think for me, it's been who we interact with most frequently. So starting out, it was our set of resources was Help Me Grow, Kids on the Move, Utah Neuro Rehab, and Orem Pediatric Rehabilitation. And then as we progressed in our journey, it was sort of helped me grow fell off because we had found our niche of resources that we needed with the therapy. And then Utah Neuro Rehab was less frequent, and so it kind of came down to Kids on the Move and Orem Pediatric Rehabilitation. And so those were two that we would have focused on and or would have taken the lead, or that we would have felt comfortable having them take the lead because they had the most interaction with me and my son. And then out of even those two, it might have been more Orem Pediatric Rehabilitation, just because it was sort of the hospital as opposed to like an early intervention program. It just, both have been great, but because it was through the hospital, felt a little bit more formal, a little bit more connected to several of the other resources that we may have needed.
I'll speak to that too, because we do have several care coordinators that are at our fingertips, and I think for me it's been the comprehensive care clinic that's been best for me because I'm out in the sticks. In Tooele, I have my primary care out there that I can jet to if we're having like an ear infection or something mellow, the flu we got this December. But and he's great for those little quick trips, but the comprehensive care clinic is my one, it's my meaty clinic. You know, it's my one that I can go to and say, let me bawl. Let me just cry and just tell you all my woes, and please help me coordinate this mess, because I'm a highly unorganized person who likes to organize. So for me, it's really hard to, I'm not, I want to be organized, but anyways.
Work in progress.
It's a work in progress. When I die, I'll probably be organized. But that's what it is. That's my meat and potatoes right there. Is because that's the place where I can go and say this. Because obviously Cameron has proven to me that she likes to keep us guessing, and let's figure out, because we have 5 different doctors, what doctor do we need to go to for this issue? So.
And real quick, I just don't coordinate my coordinators. I just, I've got your names on sticky notes, and they're here and there. Maybe it's in my purse, and I go, oh yeah, now I need to talk to the one from Select Health. Oh, wait a minute, now, the one from Memorial Clinic is who I need today. So I generally haven't done a coordination of all those people together. I just kind of use you when I need you, and I call you from the different places, depending on what the needs are that day.
Thank you. So we've also asked our panelists to each take a minute to tell us what they think would be the most important or the top recommendation for providers or care systems to improve coordination. So maybe we'll start with Tina Yellowhorse at the other end of the table.
All right, I'll go with you. Some of you know that I am actually a consultant with Utah Family Voices, and I work with other organizations here too. So I'm not trying to promote anything. I'm being really, really real here. One of the best things that has helped me is when people give me resources. I find that there's a lot of parents out here that have missed a boat somewhere. They've fallen in a crack because they didn't have the resources they needed. There's a lot out there for parents like us, but we don't know what's there. We just started this journey maybe. And so to have somebody else say, I know of this place that you can call, or did you hear about this place? Really, that's, and what my day job is really to dig and find that information for people sometimes. But it amazes me how many families have 16, 17-year-old kids that don't know about the services that can be out there for them. And I'm like, you don't know about the waiver? You don't know about, you're having horrible special ed problems? You don't know about the Utah Parent Center? If you can coordinate some of that and say, even if you have to call other people to find out that information for the family, try to do that.
I know, so could I, really. Like, if you have 2 hours, call us. So I think there's two things that I can mention, and I'll piggyback on her resources too, because, and sorry, Comprehensive Care Clinic. Sometimes in there, they have these great little informational flyers on the wall, and you bet, here's my camera being pulled out again and going, oh, click, you know. And so maybe, and while your parents are waiting, because I don't like to just sit around, I'm standing up and I'm all over the room. Have a book that has some resources out there. Have the little flyers on the wall. Have something for us to do that's informational. Like I get drowned in Facebook too, just like everybody else. But I kind of like to waste my time trying to improve things, So, give us a resource book, or give us something to flip through that's going to help us find something informative. And the other thing is, and I think we've talked about this, is the communication. I recently so I have Cameron on this anxiety med that I don't think she needs to be on anymore. And I thought to myself one day, she needs to be off this med. And I haven't had the chance to call and ask the doctor, so I called. I did make a call, but it just wasn't working out. And so I emailed the care coordinator, and I'm like, could you just find out if I can wean her off this med, because this is all I have time to do? And yeah, sure. And it was great for me. So I think having the different modes of communication available, can I text you? Can I email you? What do you prefer? I think would go a long way.
I'm going to go with parents. And the reason I'm going to go with parents, a few years ago, I had the privilege to be in the Yearland program. And you can Google that and figure out what that is. But all different disciplines were sitting in the room, and Lottie and myself were sitting up there because we were actually given the opportunity to have questions thrown to all different disciplines about the one piece that I wanted to find out what they would come back to us with was communication, because that's a problem for her. And everybody had weighed in on communication. Everybody had something to say in the room. And the one person who actually had the best sound piece of advice is sitting at the end of the table, named Tina. Because she's a mom, because she lives this life, because she knows somewhat what I'm going through, because we're still trying to figure out what our kids are saying. So my go-to would be the parent.
And I feel even sheepish suggesting anything because it's so much better now. But just thoughts I had. Develop and implement current best practices. Stay up to date with research. It's a huge relief when the care manager or one of the physicians tells me something I don't know already. I mean, it makes me know that they've cared and they've looked something up and they're keeping up to date. Listen to the family and parents and create a relationship with them so they feel comfortable coming to you for help. If there's a parent organization, work in tandem with them, and if there isn't one, try to get the parents to create something, because that's a huge benefit. We have money, we can go around insurance if we need to. If there's roadblocks, we can step in and help. Change it up. Don't say the very same thing every single visit. Try to do something a little different with research or whatever. If a family comes in and is saying the same thing, I'm not making progress, try something different. One family said, we've stopped coming to the clinic, she finally admitted, because we don't have the money and we don't have the ability to fight to get on growth hormone like you keep telling us to do. So we were so overwhelmed, we stopped coming. So we need to try to do something different to help them overcome that, or just say, it's okay then, just skip that, but come and do the rest. Consider creating a steering committee of families with your organization, because again, the parents know a lot and can help each other. I think you should do surveys and get feedback from families who are receiving the coordinated care model so they can offer you suggestions. And I think the biggest thing is just know how much we as families appreciate you and how lost we would be without you.
What I would say is, please don't reduce my daughter to a sheet of diagnoses and a set of organ systems that don't work right. Maybe you've worked with 20 other kids that are G-tube fed. Maybe you've worked with 100 other moms that are research librarians. Maybe you've worked with 100 other dads who work for city government. That doesn't mean that you know my family, and that doesn't mean that you know my daughter, and it doesn't mean that the things that you've done before will work for us. And on my end, maybe I've worked with 5 other surgeons, but that doesn't mean that I know you as a surgeon. So bring an open mind to the table. You know, just because my daughter is something on paper doesn't mean that that's all that defines her. Nina has no idea that she spent the first year and a half of her life as a list of diagnoses, and I hope that she never finds out.
I would say to keep it simple, whatever your process is of extending resources or extending help. There's so much that you're trying to filter and process, and like we'd mentioned before, attempting at different times, you know, because we all move through a process, and sometimes repeatedly we sort of cycle through being overwhelmed, being underwater, okay, finding, you know, air again, and I've got a rhythm here, you know, and so keep trying at different times, but especially in the beginning, you know, when you're really helping somebody through those first several months, keep it simple, because when the forms and the process and the things are too lengthy, you know, it's overwhelming. Everything is really overwhelming, and try again later. When maybe the parents or the family's at a place where they can process it more, because I can't even imagine how much information just got lost in the shuffle of trying to digest everything initially. So attempting again, keeping whatever you offer simple, and the personal contact. I'm not so much like the reading in the book. I might not get that information the same as I would with a conversation, and especially like was mentioned, the parents, that was a huge thing for me, is just talking to somebody who's been there, done that. And now I've been in the position where I've met somebody also going through kids on the move, and I can empathize 100% with her. And we've had great conversations, me saying, I'm 2 years ahead of you, but you'll get there. So any sort of parent resource or parent community that people can look to validate, to empathize, and to get that help.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. This is incredible stories, and we really appreciate all the ideas you brought to us. It's going to give us a lot to think about. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I echo that. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll take a short break. So if you remember, bathrooms on the lower level, bathrooms on the upper level, and we'll see you in about 10 minutes, about 10:22. All right, I think we're about ready to get started. So I'm going to jot down a note that I need a longer break next time. We knew that, yeah. All right, so we're on to our second panel, and again, we want to say thank you so much for giving us your time this morning. So we have both primary care and specialty care providers who are with us this morning. And so we're going to ask that you'll take just a moment and introduce yourselves, and then spend 5 or 6 minutes basically explaining from your perspective how you coordinate care for your patients. And if you'd like at that time to touch on anything that you heard in the parent panel, you're very welcome to. I'm sure that you'll have to touch on something at some point, because we do have a fair amount of time for audience questions, and so we'll anticipate that some of those key topics will come up again. So if you don't mind, Dr. Marty, would you like to start? Okay.
I'm Colleen Marty. I am the newest addition to Comprehensive Care Clinic. And then I also work with Rainbow Kids Palliative Care at Primary Children's as well. So I am a general pediatrician who did a palliative care fellowship, and I'm just straight out of training starting work. So thinking about how I coordinate care for my patients, this is a little bit of a new realm for me for the outpatient side. I think my general approach is really to take time to get to know families, and I have that luxury. In comprehensive care clinic, we have hour-long appointments, so we really have that luxury to talk and get to know families and what their needs are and identify what the goals are for that specific visit, recognizing that families may be in different places at different times and have different priorities and may not be ready for what I thought I had on my agenda, and may have totally different things that I didn't know about beforehand. So trying to personalize those plans and identify what families need. And then the other big piece for me has been collaboration with other team members. So acknowledging when I don't know what the answer is or what the resource is, but reaching out to the people who may, and making sure that I let families know that's what's happening. So if I don't know the answer, let me talk to somebody else and I'll get back to you. And I think that's been a big piece. And then communication has been a big theme in terms of talking to other subspecialists, helping coordinate the message and what happened in those different visits. Being at primaries, we have the ability to walk down the hall and just ask the subspecialist, and so that is a really nice thing, and most of them are pretty easy to find if you need them. And so that's been helpful, so I can just walk down the hall and find out that information and get back to families. And then the other piece with communication is learning to be a little bit more open. So giving families my email address and saying, hey, shoot me an email when you think of it, if it's not urgent. And then we'll work on it together, and I can call you back when there's a good time for both of us to actually have a conversation. But it gives me that chance to kind of prepare for what we need to talk about or identify those resources and figure out those next steps before we spend a lot of time on the phone.
I'm Michelle Hoffman. I'm one of the pediatric hospitalists at Primary Children's. I've been there for 13 years. Our patient population has shifted over time. Increasingly, we have many children like yours in the hospital setting where pediatric hospitalists, I call myself a pediatrician really. I want to be a pediatrician. I want to provide longitudinal care. The hospital's a really hard place to build those relationships, and I'm glad to hear today about some of the resources that we have now in the hospital that provide that longitudinal continuity. So important. So as a hospitalist, what I've been focusing on is how do I build a relationship quickly so that I understand what families need, and I can help both them and their child get what they need. And so I've been working on more systematic approaches to communication. I think many people call me a care conference queen. I have a lot of care conferences. Facilitated communication is a really important solution to coordinating care. And in the hospitalist world, we're learning that the care planning for the discharge transition is increasingly complex and difficult. Most people in the hospital don't understand all of the barriers to receiving all of the things you and your children need in the community. And so when I heard about the resources, give us resources, many of the doctors don't even know what those resources are. So figuring out who on your team knows those things, going and asking and finding out, like Tina said, is really important. One of the other tools that I use a lot is readiness assessment for discharge. Doctors come in with their list of the medical discharge criteria. And being medically ready to go home from a doctor's view may be very different from a parent and caregiver's view, because all of that relies on the resources that they have at their disposal, and only they know that. So one of the simple strategies I use is really assessing what's available in the home, and then are there some negotiation points? Maybe the child needs an extra treatment, respiratory treatment or airway clearance treatment, and that gets them home sooner, and that actually gets what the family wants. I want to get out of here. I hate the hospital. Or I can't possibly do another one and I need to stay another day. And having those conversations about what we have, how close we are and how different we are, and is there a middle ground to get everyone's goals met. So that's one of the other strategies that I use. I now ask every time what families need, because I think we forget to ask that. What can I do for you today? What do you need? And remembering to do that every day when you're seeing a family is very helpful.
Hello, my name is Francis Fiu. I'm a pediatric neurologist, and I apologize on 2 counts. One is I might have to leave instantly to care coordinate flying a patient to Boston, so if I get called, I have to interrupt. I apologize. The second thing is I realize, as you have all explained your stories and really appreciate those stories, that I personally and our group has probably failed many of you, if not other patients, many times, and I apologize about that. I think the biggest challenge probably that I've heard in care coordination is communication. And there are many barriers to that I see. So in our day-to-day human interaction in the office or in patient visits, communication is easy there. Although I think, as you all pointed out, there are times where the level of fear and stress and anxiety and everything you're going through is such that much of what we say may not be, that clear or heard or understood, and there's many opportunities to come back. I think that maybe what strikes me as different between, let's say, a subspecialist, particularly in our division, and some of the other services that you have all benefited from is that, believe it or not, I guess I could say I don't even know what care coordination is. I don't have a care coordinator. We don't have those resources in our division. So you could say, well, how can you function? Well, we do the best we can. But the problem is because of how busy we are and the number of patients we have, the level of care coordination for a subspecialty group such as ours in the environment we're in is not as optimal as it should be. I think consequently, we really rely on our families to remind us what they need and constantly remind us about the importance of communication. Some of the things I'm excited about that are both beneficial to us but also have their drawbacks are new methods of electronic communication. And in particular, there's, maybe some of you know about this, but there's a national program called Open Notes that was started in Boston, Philadelphia, and Seattle. And it's based on the electronic medical record and the fact that some electronic medical records have a portal whereby families, if they're electronically savvy, are able to log into their portal and actually can view their physician notes and their treatment plans, their medication lists, their laboratory results, and all of that. So we have just began working with a new electronic medical record at Intermountain Healthcare, which has caused most of us to feel like we wish to commit suicide. It's been extremely frustrating, is probably a sort of gentle way of putting it. But it does have the advantage of having this electronic portal that I'm referring to. And I've done a pilot project that I just completed like last week, where I've sent a personal message to every patient that I've seen. The first 100 I completed last week. And the biggest drawback to the problem is that 70% of patients did not receive the message because they were not connected to My Health. However, those who did, the vast majority replied to me right away and said, "Thank you, I appreciate your message." And that way we've got an open line of communication whereby if further questions arise, difficulties come up, there's a much more direct way of communicating rather than to have to rely on phone calls that then go to our triage staff who are very busy. And, obviously I know many of you have had this problem of getting in touch with us by phone. So I realize that that system won't work for everybody because some people are just not as electronically interested in communicating. But it does offer the opportunity for, I think, what people call asynchronous communication, which you all alluded to, where you call and you're not home, you're not available, they leave a message, you call back, they're not available, blah, blah, blah. So this is a means of leaving a message that then can be responded to whenever the person has time on either end of the communication pathway. So I'm excited about that prospect of open notes. I hope that we'll be able to make progress with that, and might be one way of facilitating the challenges that you expressed in terms of having to serve as the go-between between your different providers. In this case, all of the notes and information would be available to any provider as long as they have a computer screen and you can log into MyHealth or MyChart or whatever electronic system your EMR works with. Thank you.
I'm Laura Murphy. I'm a pediatric psychologist, and I work in a few settings and some are more beneficial for care coordination. So I work in the primary children's 1 week a month where we're coordinating care within the hospital. I work in a couple specialty clinics. I work in the Prader-Willi clinic, again, where we team on all the patients we're going to see. We see everyone, and then we all come back together and put our heads in, and it's nice because we have the different windows and different pieces of the puzzle all come up, and that's lovely. And then we all get a chance to communicate with families and with each other in the room in the moment. Then I also work in an outpatient psychology clinic where we do not have a care coordinator on our team. And then finally, I'm embedded in another medical, like in a GI clinic. And I think the thing that stands out for me in working with patients at maybe diagnosis, maybe 10 years post-diagnosis, maybe in a crisis moment, maybe in that, okay, we've got the groove moment. So I'm really blessed to sort of work with families kind of across their journey. But a couple of things that stood out for me and thank you, parents, you were fantastic. As a psychologist, I think it's really important for us to, at times, try to get a little more aerial view. And I think that's what care coordination at its best does, right? Because on day-to-day, we're running through the woods and we're ducking the branches and smashing into the trees and tripping over the rocks and just doing our best to keep on our feet. And that's true as providers, too. Like sometimes I'm just responding, what's happening with your child today? And one of the things that's great about Prader-Willi is at least once a year, we pull back and we come together as a team and we say, okay, where is this child developmentally now? And I'm very curious about where are siblings now? Where are parents now? So, I think about so I think it's really important to have a mental health person involved because we know that for many children with medical complexity, about a third of them in their life journey, and depending on the disorder, it can be higher, but about a third of all children will develop depression or anxiety, or they'll struggle in school with some of their learning or cognitive outcomes, or they'll struggle with peers in school. And they may do great kindergarten through 4th grade, and then around 6th grade, they realize, oh, people think I'm different. I didn't think I was different. They didn't, and so they didn't need that psychologist at 2nd grade. Or maybe they did for learning or something, but now it's like they're seeing, the child is seeing themselves in a different way, and now you also have a toddler at home as well as your medically fragile child. And so for me, it's really important, your needs vary across the continuum. What that child needs, when Lisa was talking, right, the baby with Prader-Willi needs to eat more. All of a sudden, the 12-year-old needs to eat a lot less, And so and I think that's the challenge in parenting and in medicine is that just when you think, okay, we've got this, the world flips, And so for me, the really important part of care conferences, whether it's in a prolonged hospitalization, a number of the kids I work with are there 40 days, let's say. Those first acute, terrifying 5 days, what you need is really, really different than what you need on day 20, than what you need on day 40. And so my role is really to just check in with the parent. How are the siblings taking this? I bet they want you home. And how torn must you feel to have children who need you, who don't happen to be in the same location? What are we doing about that? And that's different at day 40 than it is at day 4. Sometimes I worry that parents will think that's intrusive when I say, how are you doing? Because as a psychologist, they always think I'm thinking they're crazy. Which is not usually what I'm thinking. I'm usually thinking, you're doing great. How can we keep supporting you? So for me, I think those moments, whether it's in a long hospitalization for someone on the team, whether that's me or the physician or the parent, to say, we need to take a break, step back, take a breath, and I'll regroup. We need to get on the same page and then go forward again. And that's not a failure, right? We do it in sports all the time. Take a time out, regroup, and go forward with our new game plan. But I think it's important to do in the outpatient world as well, so that we're not kind of just chasing the crises and then missing the life in between those points. So I think one of the questions for families was, how do you pick your care manager? I always think it's important for the family to pick it. Sometimes I'm that person because I see the family every week, and so I'm riding those weekly bumps and I'm seeing them more than their physician. So sometimes I do that. Sometimes it's an identified case manager in the primary care setting or the insurance setting. Sometimes it's a physician because they can communicate with the other physicians better than I can. I have a gist of what's going on. So I guess my last thoughts are, I think having, just from a mental health perspective, keeping overall development. Ultimately, what do you want for your child? You want them to be healthy. You want them to form relationships. You want them to have moments of joy. And so that's kind of should be part of our treatment plan as well. I forgot that. So anyway, I think the other piece is just having that one person who's kind of keeping surveillance on things. You may not need me now, but like when Cameron had her kidney stones, it's like, is this anxiety? Is this pain? If I don't know your baseline, it takes me a long time to catch up, So if your primary care doesn't have a mental health professional integrated, I think that really is helpful for everyone along the journey. And I've just really, the other thing, not only do a third of kids with chronic illness get psychological struggles, a higher percentage of siblings and parents do than patients. Like in oncology, if you look at the children with cancer, the percent that have trauma responses, their mothers and fathers have more PTSD than the kids do, higher rates, because you have to helplessly watch, So I think, too, checking in with the family is taking care of the parent is the person who's holding that child. And so I feel like that's really important, and I guess I always just hope that we're tracking who's supporting the family, because if they're struggling, then the net under the child's not as strong. I'll stop there.
So I'm going to talk about two things. One is sort of a response to the parent panel, and the second is my approach to care coordination. So a response to parent panel is I kind of have a love-hate relationship with parent panels. And the reason is that in my residency, way back in the 1980s, one of the most formative things that happened in my residency was a parent panel. And I remember to this day exactly some of the things some of the parents said, particularly a woman whose child was in the NICU for a long time, and some of the thoughts she had about that. And I think that created a lot of who I am today, actually. So I really do believe in parent panels. But I'm always sitting in the audience a little anxious, waiting for the parent to say, and I saw that Dr. Fang, and she missed my kid's kidney stones, or she didn't listen to me, or she didn't spend enough time with me. Or I'm thinking about the kid I saw that I did that to, because it's a hard job. It's a hard job. And I can just think about this week, and one mom who at the end of her child's child check said, she's had a cough for a few days. And I said, okay, she sounded pretty good. Does she have fever? No, probably nothing. And 3 days later, she was back with pneumonia and a SAT of 80. And I think, did that mom think I didn't listen to her? Did I not listen to her? Was I flippant, or did it just need time to develop? And then the other kid I saw, chief complaint cough, who mom's venting during the visit that she's feeling a little frustrated with this behavior, and I'm watching it and I'm thinking very carefully to myself, do I say to her during this visit that she's here for a cough, that I think her child has autism, or do I hold that back? And so it's very hard sometimes, and I invariably spend a lot of time sometimes and get these feedbacks that upset me a lot, that say she didn't spend enough time with us. And I think, I spent an hour. What do you want from me? So it is really hard. It's a hard job. And I know you respect that, but that's why I'm always very anxious during parent panels. But I think you do a really important thing. From the standpoint of care coordination, I think one thing is I think of my patient as my patient every day of the week, every day of the year, whether they're in my clinic or they're not. So every anything that comes to me from a specialist, I open their chart, update their problem list. If I see something in a note that comes to me that I think, oh no, I might have a care manager call them. If they call in with something, I think about it, I look at their chart. All of that takes time, but I think of myself as their clinician, whether they're there or not. The hard thing is that the system doesn't support that a lot, right? And, you know, some days, gosh, I just want to see an ear infection. It's so rewarding. Here's some amoxicillin, it'll take care of the problem. There are moments that I just sit back and say to them, Mom, tell me what your kid's doing, what they've learned, because I want those moments of being able to celebrate the good. And I need that, you know, but I do think of that way. And my care managers, it is so wonderful to have them because now I'm not alone in that, first. So I don't always, you know, they're kind of a support system for me. I don't have a huge to-do list after every clinic because I'm not like, look up for Mrs. So-and-so if there's a horse riding program out in Jordan, you know. I have that support. They go into the room often after I see the patient and come back and tell me something really critical I didn't know about what's going on or who's suicidal or, you know, just amazing things that I don't have time. Nobody has, you know, I mean, I could spend hours with the patient. I still wouldn't pick that up because I'm not asking the right question. So care coordinators are, you know, invaluable in my function. And what I observe with other clinicians is they want to take care of patients the same way, but they don't feel confidence about that. And I get that. I have this one patient that I can't imagine better care coordination because I work with the patient's home speech therapist and dietitian and orthopedist. And once every other week, we sit down and talk about him. And yet, every quarter when the geneticist sees this patient, he writes in his note, this patient would benefit from more care coordination. And I think, what am I not doing? But so I get that they feel overwhelmed. They feel like they're not up to the job. They feel like the system pays them less if they do more. And I've watched in my clinic some of the clinicians grow because the care coordinators say, I can do that for you, or here's this program, and they begin. So I think one thing all of the care coordinators need to know is that in a way they're creating clinicians to do this job by kind of raising their confidence in being able to do it. So I don't know if all that made sense, but.
Thank you very much. I think you addressed very well some of the issues raised earlier and brought in some more issues that I think we'll want to address. But I'd like to open it up to the audience for questions for our clinical providers. And actually, Lisa, if you could just you didn't introduce yourself. Could you just tell us what you do and where you do it?
I did it wrong again.
Nope. Just want to make you feel
Lisa
guilty.
Sampson-Fang. I'm a developmental and general pediatrician who does a number of things, but I think my heart's in primary care. So
I know that true. Questions? Oh, come on. I'll have to ask them if you don't. Okay. We can always trust you, Pat.
So just a comment, especially for the hospitalists and for Dr. Marty. I wish that other healthcare, and it's going to be someday, and I get it, but because I belong to Select Health, I can go in and look up all of IHC's horrible documentation, Dr. Few, okay? We all agree with you. It's tough. However, I lose ground with families that are being discharged because I don't know that they've been discharged. So one of the things that I think would be helpful is when they're leaving the hospital or even clinic visits, if their coordinator in the clinic or even you said, call your health insurance, find out if you have a care manager, and get hooked up with them, because there is a place for that long-term longitudinal care that they can get hooked up at. It is amazing to me how many families, A, don't understand their benefits, they don't know what they have, and B, they don't know how to access them until only they need them. We can be more proactive. So please, when that happens, send them to the insurance companies and let us help from an outpatient standpoint.
Can help us build that into the EMR to make it easy to do right. I've been working on primary care physician communication for 5 or 6 years, and at Primary Children's, because we weren't even communicating with their physicians on the discharge transition. Our performance is really no good. It takes an intensive team effort to change that culture. We have to build systems that make it easy to do it right, and there's a lot of barriers to that. Yeah.
If you can believe it, the single most problematic issue is the very beginning is that we don't have the correct care provider in the system. So I'm listed as the primary care physician for many of my own patients. So I can send myself a message saying, your patient was admitted to the hospital, and your patient is being discharged from the hospital.
You know, one of the things that's happening is this huge growth of urgent care and connect care, right? And that's a real challenge for the primary care doctors, because I have a complex patient that I see once a year for their well child check and all their complex needs. And every time they have an ear infection, sore throat, whatever, they go to urgent care, call Connect Care, which is fine. I want them to do what works for them. But that kind of leaves me in a spot where I have no idea what's going on until I get that call that, hey, now my child, has a rash from the amoxicillin. What am I supposed to do? And that's fine. Again, I want families to be able to access care in whatever way it works for them. But I think the system has to catch up and figure out how to connect all that and how to make that work in a financial way that the primary care doctor doesn't feel just like, my job is to take phone calls all day, to sweep up whatever's going on that happened at Connect Care 2 days ago. But
that makes me have a question about the Connect Care. Since it's through IHC, do they chart in the IHC chart so that anyone can see it?
They're supposed to. They're supposed to. There's some issues with that are being solved, but they're supposed to be, so that if you're an Intermountain doctor, you would see it. But if you're a Wasatch Pediatrics or something, you wouldn't. And as far as I know, they actually don't send out notes.
I actually have a comment too about the electronic health record. I liken it to, I call it dumpster diving, and it feels very much like that experience. You have to really dig to find the critical information, and parents who bring the binder that has the critical information, it's so valuable to us to rapidly distill down what's going on and what we can best do to help a child and their family. I've been thinking about this for a really long time, and I hope some of you might stop and talk to me afterwards, because I'm working on an idea for a rapidly disseminatable web-based application that just gives the essence. And it helps families assume more of that care coordinator role by getting, I say, the information from the horse's mouth. When you're in the subspecialist's office, you maybe need 2 things from that person. This is the problem, this is the next step. If they were willing to record that, and then you went to the next doctor and they could see all of the subspecialist's 2 sentences, you can help become that doctor that you really don't feel comfortable being. You don't want to say what the doctor was said to you at the cardiology visit to the infection doctor. You want the cardiologist's 2 important, most comprehensive sentences to say that gives that infection doctor the essence. And that's the idea that I've been working on for a couple of years. I think that that's important and powerful. We need tools that help transmit information quickly. They're dynamic, they're up to date, and they're not cluttered. So cluttered. It is so difficult when you pick up the phone and call us and you have one quick question, we could be diving for a while to find that information quickly. So even if it's in the EMR, it's very hard to digest and make decisions quickly.
I just want to add on to that because, so yes, the EMR is hard, and the more medically complicated your child, the harder it is to find because every contact gets noted, and so finding the critical information is pretty tricky. We do still, if you're in the Intermountain system, we do still have glitches. The one that we went live in October, the one we just figured out about a month ago is anytime a medical physician clicked on refer to behavioral health, there was no link to that. So they clicked and made the referral, but it was never received on our end. It just went into a black electronic hole somewhere. So I think, part of me, like when I was listening to the parents, it was so moving. I was so empathetic. I was like, of course you're not a doctor, right? And we all know doctors have different skills in communicating, both verbally and in writing. Some doctors are very detailed, and then they bold the points. Here's the bottom line. Here are my racks. Others, it's rambling and within there. Others, it's not in there. And so when I see you and I say, well, what did the cardiologist say? I may have read the cardiologist's note, but I don't actually know what they said to you. If they told you what they put in the note, I also don't know what you made of what they said to you. So sometimes when I'm asking, like just to take the pressure off you, I'm just trying to see what page are you on? What page is the cardiologist on? Where are we going to find a common page? And so also just know that if you can just say, I don't remember, that's really great. That's so important for us to know that you were taking in 1,000 pieces of information and you're left with 2, because that's what we do when we're stressed, every human being. We kind of focus in on what hits us. Then we can go from there. So I guess I would just say that that's part of why I'm asking, and you don't actually have to be responsible for it. It is our job to talk to each other. It is hard in the context of how our days are structured by systems bigger than us, but it's really, really helpful when I know where you are in understanding things, I guess.
I'm Dr. Leslie Webster, and I work at Wasatch Pediatrics up in Park City with an amazing care coordination team. And I want to tag on what Dr. Fang said about, my care coordinator is my left arm, and Liz Wall, my parent partner, is my right arm, or vice versa. We communicate, I'm old school, face-to-face pretty much every day. We'll just convene sort of in my little area. And one thing that Liz does for us is she'll make pre-visit phone calls to special needs kids that she sees that are coming down the pike in the week and then in the next 2 weeks. And she'll ask the parents, have you been seen at an urgent care? Which specialists have you seen? She'll then, either let me know and or my medical assistant know. And so we'll go on to Intermountain, or we'll call StatMD, or we'll, try to get the info from the early intervention team. So we have all that information when the patient comes in. And then Liz will ask the questions, what can we do for you? What other needs do you have? And it's been a completely wonderful, useful tool to help me then to walk right into the room and not have to ask all those same questions again. It's just boom, I have your records from Instacare, I have your records from Dr. Few's visit, and I have, then often Liz and Dusty will come into the room either with me or after I've seen the patient and wrap everything up in a coordinated manner. So I feel very blessed to have the face-to-face daily contact, and then our mental health coordinator, Dan Braun, is there at least once a week, and we communicate through a messaging system with our health, Greenway is the EHR that we use. So I just wanted to put a plug in for my MedHome team, and they are amazing. So with Annabelle and with Nina and with many other patients in the practice, they literally go to their houses and take them dinner. They go to their homes and sit down with the Medicaid forms to try to help families. We have a Spanish-speaking coordinator at our front desk that's become part of the medical home team to go to the apartment of some Spanish-speaking people. And I can't tell you how the quality of care and the feedback from patients is just phenomenal. So that's one piece the parent partner really can help us ahead of time with the visit, gathering this information. So I'm very blessed.
I did want to comment about an extension of that is, we talked a lot about the care coordinator face-to-face with the clinician and the patient or the parent. But the care coordinator also can be a big drive for system change within an office. And I think that role is incredibly important. And one example in our office is we realized that, and I don't know if you know this is happening, but the new iCentra system, if on the problem list anywhere is cognitive disability, intellectual disability, on the front sheet it prints out mental retardation. If you put in high body mass index on the front sheet, it prints out obesity. And those things were being handed out at the front desk to the parent, the front sheet, to carry through the visit. And a parent saw that and was devastated. And the care coordinator was important in interfacing with that family and helping them process that, but also in feeding that back to the office. And we no longer give the face sheets to parents. We have talked to iCentra, and actually it's not an iCentra problem, it's a national SNOMED problem. And we've talked to them, but it can't be changed in any short way. So a system drive to at least not put that out and have the patient see it. So our care coordinators have driven much of the system change within our office around a lot of things. And I think many of you as well probably know that you play a role in that. So
I've got two questions. First off, when you say open notes, is that only physician to physician?
Actually, no. The Open Notes program, which was started by a group of 3 different healthcare consortiums, sort of like Intermountain, but in Boston and in Philadelphia and Seattle, are designed specifically for them to be open to patients and families. There's a tricky part for adolescents. That becomes complicated, but it's still possible with the right signing of paperwork, that the parent of a child who cannot fully manage for themselves can see that individual's notes and the laboratory results and so forth.
Okay, because you just kind of answered my second part. My experience was that I had a patient or a mother who tried to access her pediatric child's information, and she was told because of HIPAA, she couldn't even look at the physician notes through Select Health access.
Yeah, I think your point is well taken. I think the rules that we have in our country that are well-meaning to protect privacy, this is a political statement, but honestly, they interfere with people's access. There are ways around it. You have to know how to do it, and it's technically not true, but it really makes it more difficult to get access to your own notes.
How does a parent go through that process so she can access the child's notes?
Well, that's probably where our care coordinators, or in our case, our MAs or nurses, should help families at the time of the visit to get on the system and practice with it and make it work.
Put that on comprehensive notes, please. Because it was through comprehension that she was blocked to access to her child's notes.
But it is a work in progress, and Dr. Hoffman was alluding to that fact, that we're really trying to work within the confines of the rules that are imposed on us, both by the federal government, but also by our own institutions and their own vagaries, to try to make those systems work for people.
I really wish parents would sign up and look at their notes. I used to always send a copy to my notes out to parents. And then I was informed, and this sounds crazy, but it's appropriate, that I needed a release to send a record to a parent of their child's. And the reason is you never know who's opening the mail, right? And so if I put in the social history, that the dad's deciding to become transgender, and grandma opens that note, that's bad. So I really wish parents would get on to electronic and get access to their records, because I find they really benefit from looking at them, and it's really hard to go around the system.
So I also have to brag. I'm part of Leslie's medical home team. They take the time every other month to meet with early intervention to discuss every patient they've referred to us, what we're doing, and their progress. And I also want to praise Annabelle because she was empowered enough that when the ER doctor told her, we think we should just send her home, she said, no, you need to find out what's going on. I will not leave until it's done. So I love her.
I have a question about the CHI, the Clinical Health Information Exchange, and how there can be a drive to get more providers to sign up for that or use that. We work for the early hearing detection program, so we're working to get the hearing results out, but it seems like that would be a great place for coordination of care.
I'll field that one. So for those who aren't familiar, CHI is the Clinical Health Information Exchange. 9 years ago, these were established with federal support in every state. And as I understand, in every state they're struggling. So it's a system of trying to be able to share any electronic data in any system, whether it's physician office, hospital, lab, X-ray, within states usually is the way it's organized, so that that information would be available to anybody, any clinician who has access. And there's been incredible struggles in a variety of venues, some legal, people being, institutions, organizations being willing to share that information, and also in electronic compatibility. So there are some 300 electronic health records in use out there, and each requires an interface to bring in this information, and the standards for the information are challenging. So it's a wonderful idea. We actually had a project that depended on it, and it got nowhere because the CHI was not able to get enough data, and the electronic compatibilities were too much of a challenge. So I would encourage everybody to sign up for it in your offices, and to, because the more people who are interested in making it work, the better it will work. And it would enable access to information from other systems, such as newborn screening, early intervention, et cetera. And Utah has always been on the forefront of making those electronic systems work, but it's been a huge challenge. Go for it.
Hello.
Yes.
Good. Okay. So I recognize that you guys are on the front line, just as most of us are on the front line. So I'm sure you may not have all the answers to my questions, but maybe you could direct us in a way that we can be supportive of you as well as our families. And my first question is about how can we get more care coordination, because I work at Primary Children's, and I try and direct our families to an office according to their insurance that does have care coordination, because I recognize how important it is for families. But I also see some clinics that are backing away from more care coordination. And Dr. Lisa, any of us that have worked with you recognize how passionate you are for your patients and the great work and care you give your patients, and we thank you for that. And if somebody's writing, somebody needs more care coordination, it's not because you haven't done your job, it's because we need more care coordination. So that's my first question. My second question is, as you talk about the systems issues, how are they being addressed, and what can we do as a body to help support your work in changing systems? And my third question is, so the families I work with all have life-limiting conditions. And of recent, within the last few months, I've had multiple phone calls from parents saying, I need mental health support for my 15-year-old, my 17-year-old, my 16-year-old. This is the oldest child with a kiddo with life-limiting conditions. SIB of a kid with a life-limiting condition. They're suicidal, they're depressed, they're whatever's going on. It's very tough to find support for that. I know that health insurance is an issue. As I turn and look at Pat and a few other people in the room, I recognize that's a problem. But for us to understand where those supports are, and maybe, Dr. Laura, you don't have those answers, but where can we find those? And can we make sure that all of us as care coordinators can get that information? Because in the world we live in, our teens need more and more and more and more. So that's it. Go for it.
Who wants to deal with that?
Yeah, we're woefully understaffed and served, I think. And it's true, right, that the child who may have a shortened lifespan or who has the chronic, they're the identified patient. And our systems are all set up for the identified patient, even though the entire family is affected. We have within behavioral health in the Intermountain system a central intake number, which is, I'll give it to you now, so if you want to know. 801-313-7711. It's staffed by 3 social workers, and they will help, who've been doing the job for a long time, and they help connect people to providers on their panel, so they can help people navigate the mental health system. And of course, it's really hard there because mental health coverage is carved out. It's often different. So there are patients I can see in the hospital because I'm covered in the hospital. I'm paneled there, but I can't see them in my outpatient clinic because of their insurance. So there's a breakdown in continuity there. There are patients who their medical providers are covered, but I'm not covered. So we do have a team with psychologists and psychiatrists who are at Primary Children's, the pediatric behavioral health, and our mission is to serve children and families who have medical conditions. So we will see siblings, but we run a long wait list because there are only about 6 of us or 7 of us. Parents have to go into a whole different system, right? Because we're a pediatric provider. And so, again, but I think the most important thing is for families to go to the person who they identify. So I'm happy. If I'm the medically ill child's therapist, I am asking and more than happy to help parents find counselors or therapists that I know, and the same for siblings, and to try to make that happen. But it's really case by case. It's not systemic. So it's very ad hoc, and it depends on how much is the provider asking the family, what does the family need? And then we just have a shortage of providers. Once you get outside the valley, it's very, very difficult. Now, the other thing our service will do is, because we often have patients who are maybe in rural Utah, is I'm happy to consult with other providers. So if there's a patient who's coming to me from the St. George area, and I'll just use Prader-Willi again as an example, and there are therapists down there who know anxiety and depression, but they don't get what this particular disease does. They don't really understand the demands of whatever. We're happy to consult. We do video conferences as well as phone calls with pediatricians, with psychologists, with social workers, with mental health counselors, to try to say, here's where the medical and psychological are intersecting. Again, we do it to Wyoming, Montana, wherever we see our patients, we will make calls to try to integrate that care and help the therapist have a broader lens. But it's very, very imperfect. Absolutely.
I think in terms of siblings, keep in mind the family's pediatrician. I'm sure you would agree. We do so much mental health. It's probably on any given day, half of what I do is anxiety, ADHD, and depression. Yeah, and with some offices, we now have mental health integration. So we as the pediatricians have a lot more support than we used to have to be able to feel like we can do that job better. We don't have counselors, but we have care coordinators who try their best with the limited resources that are out there to connect them with resources. And so, yeah, although I think with care coordinators, I find it's so much better, because what used to happen is you hand them a list of psychologists and the family has to figure out who's on their panel, who's not. And our care coordinators do a great job of honing that down for them. They're still, they call in and they might be 6 months, 9 months out, or they find out that they have a huge copay or whatever. And so there's still all these barriers, but it's better.
parents gave us some of your answers around how we can get more care coordination. Right time, right place, right person. We have a lot of redundancy right now. That came up earlier with multiple different care coordinator roles. Care coordination is a team-based process, and everyone on the team needs to be working at the top of what they're able to do. Fran shouldn't be coordinating a transfer to Boston right now. Our system isn't set up to support Fran to do that. And so figuring out ways to look where there's redundancies and improve efficiencies. What these parents just demonstrated this morning was parent activation. Parents are the numero uno care coordinator. But not all are ready to be in that role. In that first experience coming home from the hospital, they're not ready. That's when we need intensive care coordination and support. Right place, right time, right people. And then they become activated. And some never can because of social determinants and other issues. And so we need to be applying the resources where the resources are needed. There is still quite a bit of redundancy that we have to figure out.
Too much lack of coordination versus
That's right. Yeah.
Is it on? Okay. So in addition to that, parents are
Numero uno.
like the big part of the team. We have to remember that. Again, you're going to have some parents that are like, I can do it all. We really can't, but we say we can most of the time. And then there's parents that are going to need, because of the barriers, because of the understanding. So if I can get everybody that talks to a parent today to remember to try to train them a little bit. If you're a specialist, hey, who's your primary care provider? If they look dumbfounded when you say primary care provider, say pediatrician, family doctor, whatever clicks their mind of, oh, that's the doctor we see that we go to all the time. When I talk to parents, sometimes they don't know what certain terminology is. So try to find that out and say, can I send them this information? I know that takes a few more minutes of your 7 minutes you get to spend with us or whatever it is. But if we can get a little bit of training from the people that know, and then it's hard. And it broke my heart to hear Lisa say that, those kind of things happen. Most doctors, most nurses, most professionals, I truly believe, are here because they have a passion for our kids. They have a passion to help someone who is sick, someone who is in need. And so, I look at it from the parent side, and I've seen a lot of parents that'll say, oh, we're going to this doctor tomorrow. And then somebody else will chime in and say, oh, they've got a terrible bedside manner. You don't want to go to them. You want to go to this guy in Boston or whatever. And it's hard to watch that because, a lot of the times it's somebody who saved my kid's life. And so it's a matter of developing a relationship, getting them to understand they're part of the team. I'm really proud to be part of that team. And so the ones that we can lift up and bring up and say, you are part of this team. Let's make you a coordinator too. I know you have all these other things that you have to do. You have to take care of a sick child, just like we do, and you have to take care of them from your side of it. There's a lot of people that look at you for all the answers. And sometimes if you just show us your human side, and it's okay to not know all the answers sometimes. It does help some families because some people just don't get it. The doctor is the person that's going to fix everything. The doctor is and I know that you're not, and I know that you are. Okay, I know that we're going to work together to try to make everything as optimal as possible for my kid. But so show them your human side. Try to train them a little bit on that medical home. And sometimes they don't understand medical home. But just let's make sure the doctor that sees him the most, whoever that is, gets all the information from me as the neurologist, or from me as the orthopedist, or whatever it is. And that'll help them understand that all of their information is in one file somewhere.
Sorry, you're going to hear a lot from us probably. So I've been thinking this whole panel, I wish that it's like my brain is exploding right now. I really wish there were some, like the chi. Holy cow, why can't we get that going, that can interface with a lot of different programs? Because I'll tell you a really embarrassing story. The VNS implant my daughter just had, okay? We needed an MRI the day before. So I'm driving in from Tooele, got a lot of time to think. I'm talking to my husband on the phone going, haha, do you remember when you had your MRI and all our credit cards got demagnetized? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, we won't have to worry about that. Cameron doesn't have credit cards on her. And he's like, doesn't she have metal? Doesn't she have a hardware? And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, she does. Let's start remembering in our brains what metal is in my child's body right now. And honestly, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I cannot wrap my head around my health. I just can't. I don't know. I don't know what it is about me. Anyways, so maybe that information is in my health. I don't know. But I am literally driving in there, making phone calls to the MRI techs going, is my kid going to die going into this MRI? Because she has metal in her hips. She has this plate in her head that has been there for 15 years that I know we joked with the neurosurgeon when it was put in, is she going to set off the alarms at the airport? Haha, no. That was all that was told to me, and maybe was told more. I don't know. Like I said, 15 years ago, I can't even remember half of my kids' names sometimes. So it's this thing that I'm like, why aren't those details told to me? Maybe they were, maybe they weren't, I don't know. But I get to the MRI, and I'm telling this person, I'm like, the registration, I don't even know if we're going to have this MRI because I have all this metal in my kid's body, and I don't know if she can even go in this MRI machine. And this was, I think, Thursday. I'm pretty sure neurosurgery nurse was out of town on Friday. Dr. Bolo was out of town. He was just getting into town on Monday. Like all these people, of course it was a weekend. And so I get there and the MRI tech was like, okay, calm down. This, and this, and this. It's going to be okay. And I'm like, I still don't believe you, but I'm going to trust you because I have nothing to do but trust. But my whole point of that story, and she was fine, by the way, and we had the MRI. It did take a special MRI, but my point of the story is I think it's this communication thing. It's this, why don't we all have access to this same thing? I actually got wrong information from the orthopedist care coordinator that, nope, she can't have an MRI. And so I don't know how I got a hold of this woman. But yeah, I don't know. We need something that both of us can access because I can't work without you guys, and you can't work without us because we have this knowledge and we have this history, and you guys are these awesome people that save our kids. And we need something like that we can access and you can access and we can talk to each other.
I need it one more time. Sorry, I need this one more second. You can't tell me to stop. This is really important. So we're all pediatric people here right now. Well, a few of us have just graduated over to adult. It is really scary, okay? It is really scary. The moment your medically fragile, special needs, chronic care child with a tracheostomy or whatever turns 18, it's like a switch goes off in your mind. I tell people every day how to do things for a child over 18 years old. When it came to me, I was asking her, like, what? Really, does it work that way? Are you sure? Honestly, what are we going to do now? What doc? And I know that you guys already know one of the biggest barriers is adult care for our kids. But that is where we're lacking. That is where we're trying really hard. Luckily, we've got some great people. When last time we were at neurology, his neurologist said, I'll keep him. I'll keep him as long as we need to keep him until we find the right provider for him. It's scary that we've been turned away from one clinic already that he needs once a year desperately. And I can't seem to find what I need. So that going into the future, we've got to look at who is going to take care of these kids.
The challenge is, a patient came in a couple months ago and I said, why are you here? And the mother said, he's got gout. I haven't the slightest idea how to take care of gout. I saw a patient for a well visit this week and I did a breast exam because she happens to be old enough to be at risk. And I have no idea whether I'm supposed to order a mammogram or an ultrasound or what I'm supposed to do. So those things make me realize that I'm not doing a favor sometimes by holding on too long. I don't know the good nephrologist. I don't know the good neurologist. I don't know the good surgeons on the adult side. So transition has to happen. We just have to figure out how to make it safe, right? And
just a couple of comments, and I'll apologize in advance, but I personally feel that we are responsible for the problems we have. If you're not happy with the fact that we have multiple insurance companies with different systems and different electronic medical record systems, you need to vote accordingly. The other thing that I would say in terms of actual help is I think there's a subspecialty group that many of you may not be aware of for our patients who are in transition. So those are patients who are trained in medicine and pediatrics, so they are med-peds physicians, and they're outstanding physicians. They're very well trained. There aren't too many of them, I agree, but there are more and more in Utah, and I would encourage you, those of you who are going through the transition process of trying to identify a PCP, primary care physician, who's med-peds trained, because they really do have the experience of the child as well as adult care.
Well, we're a little behind schedule, but thank you all very, very much. We appreciate our panel and your perspectives, and I think we've raised a lot of issues maybe for our next learning session. But thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much. This was great. Obviously, we could have kept going. It was terrific. So I definitely heard a number of key points that we'll be trying to summarize for y'all in some meeting notes that will be sent out, and we'll also include a link to the audio and slides from this meeting. But I heard that we need to fix the EHR system, so we'll get right on that. All right, probably not something that we can do just individually, but noted, duly noted. It sounds like we need more mental health providers, also duly noted. But the thing that I heard that maybe we could do was definitely around communication, not too much, at the right time, do it with empathy, acknowledge and validate the parents, use multiple methods, keep it simple, do a little education, offer resources, and keep trying, right? And I heard that you need to include parents in the process. If you can, get a parent partner in your practice. If you can, get a parent steering committee for your practice. Or find a parent group or create a parent group. Whatever you need to do. They're the experts. Bring them in. Bring them in. If we could have the equivalent of a complex care or Prader-Willi syndrome clinic for every condition, wouldn't that be amazing? Yeah, but in the meantime, we can work on these other little things and keep advocating. Advocate for your patients, and if you're a parent, advocate for your children and for yourself. I heard Tina Yellowhorse talk about a journal. I know that these parents, they have their systems, they have their ways of keeping track of the most important things. Keep doing that. And find your sounding board. Find the people you can talk to and trust. So This was great. Thank you all for your time. Get a little more food. Drive safely. We have another meeting, a UCCCN meeting on April 18th. And we'd love to see your care coordinators and other people doing that role in your practices. They're always welcome. Thank you.
And I'd just like to thank everybody who made this meeting come together. The audio crew did a great job, and particularly thanks to Mindy. She did an incredible amount of work to put this together.